Hi, everyone. I can't wait for you to meet today's guest, Numrah Irfan, a management consultant and former Deloitter with over 2 decades of experience helping companies grow and transform. Her work focuses on building high-performing operating models, elevating customer experience, and unlocking value across the customer lifecycle. She partners closely with leadership teams to make strategy real and deliver meaningful impact. Numrah brings a thoughtful, grounded approach to transformation, one rooted in curiosity, intentional growth, and a deep respect for the people doing the work. She understands that meaningful change happens in the messy middle, not on the edges. Numrah is on the impact list because she grows on purpose, with courage, clarity, and a willingness to sit with those harder questions. She leads with a quiet strength that's unmistakably felt, and she shows up with generosity, the kind that believes in rising together. Today, we talk about the moments that shaped her leadership, the unexpected turns in her journey, and how embracing that messy middle of transformation has led to profound personal and professional growth. We explore how she navigates change, how she stays grounded, and the imprint she hopes to leave behind. Let's get into it. Numrah, I'm so excited to have you on the show today. We used to spend so much time together when we were working at WattServe, and now I only get to see you every once in a while. So I'm really excited to share your story with our listeners.
Likewise, I am so excited to chat with you and just have a great dialogue. So thank you for having me.
Let's ease into it. It's, for people are going to be listening to this whenever they do, but for us, it's a Friday afternoon. What's something that's given you pause or made you laugh this week?
I had all the emotions about the funniest thing. My husband and my son, who's almost 8, wanted to go see the Blue Jays play the Dodgers because, it's a big matchup and they couldn't make it on the weekend. They couldn't make it on one day. And the next game was Wednesday in the middle of the school day. And we went back and forth. And they went to the game. My husband took off half the day off work. My son only went half the day. And I was just like so anxious. I'm like, is it okay to miss school to go watch a baseball game? But he's only in grade 2. And so anyway, they had the best time. He got to hold the bases. Like, it was just like a reminder for me, like, everything does not have to be perfect according to schedule all the time. We can break from it and he can miss a day of school. So it was really nice to see that.
Oh, for sure, right? It's balancing out. Yes, we need the structure of the education system for sure, but also some of those moments of like pure joy and pure memory is being able to go and have experiences with our parents and grandparents and family members. And there's a lot of rich learning that comes through that too. And to your point, I think it's wonderful to be teaching our kids that sometimes you got to just break the mold. You got to break the mold and go do the fun thing because that's going to, light you up and really create that sustainable memory that is
Yes,
so
yes.
critical. Yeah.
Yes, and I know we're going to talk today about my kind of path and my learnings, but this is a lifelong learning. To take this simple example, prioritization needs to be redone constantly. And sometimes your priorities can be like, oh, I have a test or I have a big thing at work. And sometimes your priorities can be like, I want to go spend time with my loved one. And that is a lifelong lesson. So he's only 8, but hopefully
It's
we
okay.
can.
We're starting him early. I really like that. No, it's, we've rethought about family vacations in my house. And so for me this week, it was let's just go spend 2 days away as opposed to a full week away. But there's something really intentional about
Yeah.
we're all going to turn off our phones. We're all going to turn off the computers and just spend the time doing things together every meal all throughout the day. I agree with you. I think as a kid, I'm not sure I really thought about it or spent enough time, or early in my career, it was so about show up and do the work every day. So I love that, our kids are getting from us the importance of this intentionality for sure.
Absolutely.
And, it's a really good dovetail into why you were on my impact list in the first place. I had that benefit of working with you at Deloitte earlier in our careers and then getting a more closer tie with you during our time at WattServe and obviously beyond as we both kind of embarked on our entrepreneurial journeys.
Mhm.
The thing I always admired is that you really do grow on purpose. It's not because your role has said you've got to learn these new skills or life has said you've got to learn these new skills. It's because you intentionally chose to do the inner work to be able to be a better leader, be an great example for your kids and your family, and really being intentional with how you show up. And you make the work better and you make the people around you better. And I really think that's such a rare quality. And, I wanted you to hear that back because I think we don't take enough time to really discuss with our colleagues and the people that made an impact on us what that impact looks like.
Thank you. I really appreciate hearing that. I do. We don't always get it right, I think, but that's part of the growth path and reflecting on what you're good at, what other people think you're good at. These things all help you grow with that next thing. So I really appreciate you reflecting on that.
And, obviously you've made that pivot from being like really in corporate and now more on that consulting side. Tell me a little bit about how you lead today, your style, what you stand for. What does this look like for you in practice?
Yeah, how I lead today, or everything that I've experienced and have so much more to experience, I'm sure. But where I'm at right now, I think to me, it's just being grounded all the time as much as I can be. And there are moments where you can get wrapped up in a lot of expectations, deliverables, but I'm trying intentionally to be a leader that's always grounded, always goes back to what are we trying to achieve? Do we understand it? This thing that I remind myself now as a consultant is you might understand something in the beginning when you do the official assessment or discovery, but then you may have to go back and re-understand it midway through or even further or a long way through. So I am trying really hard to be somebody who wakes up every day, all the basic things that everyone thinks to do, which is, what can I do, to help things along, to resolve the problem, but do that in a way where I am continually grounded on what's the purpose again? Do I really understand it? And if it's messy, which it always is, whether we want to admit it or not, these business problems that we're all solving are always messy. So if it's messy, don't push it under the rug. Kind of ride the waves. It's okay that it's not smooth. So be intentional, come back to the understanding, challenge your understanding because you may not have gotten it right, and do not go past those moments where you're like something doesn't feel right and there's probably something underneath that. So I think all of that to me is my current definition of showing up with competence, like ability, not necessarily intelligence and insight and the research and competitive, those are different types of competence. But for me, like being my fully competent self is doing all of those things, like understanding, being back to the purpose, opening up conversations which have something a little bit deeper underneath. And if you don't, then the mess will still be there. So really trying to uncover that. I'm still figuring it out too, but those are the principles I'm trying to push right now in my growth journey.
And it's really interesting, for the purpose of our listeners here, you and I have actually spent a ton of time in large and
Mhm.
small scale transformation work. And exactly that messy middle, for lack of a better term, that you've just described is so different, I find now than it was when we started, 15, 20 years ago,
Yep.
right? Now it really is, if you don't name it, nothing gets done with it. If you don't name it today, it's going to come back at the end. And, that's what I'm really curious as we sort of hear how you're leading today and what the current state of the work you're working on is. Being in transformation work as long as you have been, I know you've seen it stall, right? And what actually happens? What are the leaders, saying yes to in the room and then nothing is moving? Tell me more about what's going on there because you alluded to it. It's a very real thing happening in a number of organizations today. This kind of we're taking silence as alignment. It definitely isn't. So tell us more.
Yeah, I really want to actually focus on the word stall because, it has a negative connotation. And I think there's a view as a consultant, whether you're with a firm or you're an independent consultant, like there's a view of, well, there's a deliverable and a timeline and a schedule, and, we are off path. Even if you're an internal project manager, you're off path, you're off the path. And so stall can have a negative connotation. But I think I have been really focused on if my intention as a consultant is to get to the impact, to get to the right answer, to get to the purpose, then sometimes the stall is actually great
Mhm.
because, as you said, we've identified it. But yes, the stall is almost inevitable when you're doing work with operating model. even if you're doing work at the role or process level, if it's big structural change, small functional change, these are the moments when change discussions are happening. And change discussions are happening ultimately with humans. And those are our clients or our colleagues or our stakeholders. And so things, when they stall, to me, it's like just an opportunity. And yes, it will put you back on schedule, put you back on your schedule. Yes, it will probably delay. Maybe you won't get to the perfect deliverable and the perfect timeline, but you really have to kind of say, okay, well, what does this mean? Why are we stalling? I have found in these change discussions, it's rarely to do because we didn't get to the right answer in terms of the process or the strategy or the model. The people that come to these discussions come with great input and great insight and great experience because they're part of the business. They know it. So they'll get to the right answer. It's more about what's the thinking is or what's not being said in those moments and the alignment behind those. And so it's kind of like you can say in the moment, I can sit there and nod in the meeting, but what does that actually mean for my, actual alignment and intrinsic, understanding and intrinsic alignment to what I'm saying or what the team is saying. So I almost expect those moments now, not to say that I'm looking for them, but you kind of make sure that when they happen, we take a moment and we figure out, well, what's underneath it. And it could be so many things. Ultimately, these are human issues. Like when we start to move from design to execution and we're not moving fast enough or we're not moving to what we agreed to, it's because we're all human in the room and execution is, change. So I have a lot of things I'm learning and continuing to work through in terms of how we unravel, how we use that stall as an opportunity. But as you said name it, but definitely acknowledge it. So that's like number one. You can't just keep pushing the wedge and hope it just lands because it's just going to continue to not happen. And so I think just acknowledging it, realizing, hey, this might not be a quick fix. I mean, sometimes it is, sometimes it's just a misunderstanding, but when you've got, big transformations, there's no quick fix. And so you kind of have to really stop, pause, understand, go back to those principles, Laurie. Like I go back to those basic principles. It's so important of, did we understand it? Did we listen enough? Did we listen enough? And did I listen enough in the right forum? Because that matters as well. Whether it's virtual, in person, whether it's one-on-one or in a group, all those things matter. And so going back to, did we understand it? Did we actually have the right conversations? Are we having an honest conversation with the right people? But these are some of the tactics that I think we work through. But I use those stalls as just a means to make an impact even more, even if it puts the timing or the deliverable behind. Let's name it, let's talk through it.
And it's really interesting. I working in the much more structured firms, the pressure to not have those stalls was so real, right? Because you're working with a number of people on large projects. Everybody's going to their next project or their vacation or whatever it is, but it's so complicated to make sure all the Tetris pieces are in the right order. Now, as a consultant coming in and really being kind of that extra sounding board and not having to think about all of those additional complications, what I'm hearing you say is you can actually more intentionally close that gap when things are not aligning, when we have to stall, when we have to revisit something. It actually feels more natural to have to do that, even though we've been conditioned before to be like, no, a stall is a bad thing. If you're stalling, something's broken. I'm actually hearing you say there's actually opportunity within that to rethink about the change that's occurring, how it's impacting everybody. Have we taken all the stakeholders with us? And the stall can be seen as a good thing.
Ultimately, yes, if we can get through it. I mean, certainly there are times when there's just too much riding on the project and we just have to get to the end and then get to phase two and maybe we try to solve it there. But for the most part, what I've experienced is when I'm working with the right sponsor, you can have that honest conversation with that sponsor, right? Because they're seeing it. They might be seeing it from a different viewpoint, but they're seeing it as well. And so, yes, as a smaller consulting firm, independent person, like you can actually have much more honest conversation and say, okay, let's put the project timeline and budget aside for a second and talk about what's really happening and are we going to get to where we wanted to. And so I think transparency, with the right person, really important. And then most recently, actually, what I found is there was a leadership team, senior leadership team, and we hit some of these bumps and we weren't moving to execution. And there was a lot of backtracking on, hey, what about this? I forgot what we decided here. Or did we take this into consideration? And we just kept going back. And, we had all the honest conversations, even with the very senior leaders. And what ultimately helped us move forward was actually going to a different stakeholder group, because we had been working with the most senior team for the few months of designing. Even though we got into detailed design, like the voices of the people who were the most influential, maybe level down people in the organization weren't part of it. And so those leaders needed to hear the voices of those trusted people that were the actual change agents, execution agents in the business. So I was very fortunate because this company had great, director, manager level people that were hyper focused on getting stuff done. So we had to bring those voices in and really get them engaged and really get them to start to lead. And it took longer, but now they're moving towards execution. So it is a must do, especially I think for smaller, firms or consultants, because your whole value statement is, impact, and you're not going to get that. And you can walk away, you might still get your payment, whatever, but your whole value statement relies on, hey, did we achieve this? Did we get the impact? Did we get the outcomes? So it's uncomfortable. It throws you off, but you think you just lean into it and you say, okay, let's just keep problem solving. Let's keep digging in.
Yeah. And I think that, one of the things I've always appreciated about you is that you take it as a learning. You're not taking it as the negative, the digging in, the curiosity, the, trying to better understand where the client is, bringing in more voices. It's that creative problem solving to get everybody brought along on the journey. That's always been something I think that is so key in any organization, any client that we're working with. But, and obviously I've had the advantage of seeing you in the corporate setting, the consulting setting, but as you're sort of where you are today and in the life place you are and all the things you're thinking, one of the things, we know that leadership journeys are never linear, and there's good days and there's bad days, and there's always learning both ways. I am curious about something that has, challenged or stretched you in ways that you genuinely didn't expect, in the work and building your own thing. Like, what is something that just you were like, I did not anticipate this, but I am taking it away as good learning? I'd love to hear that story.
Yeah, it's a big, an easy one, because it just stands out so well in my mind. The times that I feel have shaped me or that I've grown is moments where I was taking huge leaps and almost ways that I was like, I think I actually am going to fail, which is not the greatest self-talk, but that's, as you grow in your career, you kind of think you're like, that's a big one. And so I've had lots of pivots, as many people do, but I think of two big pivots. One was after 10 to 12 years working in consulting and big enterprise, global enterprise, never worked with a small company. Before then, I went to a 50-person shop. I think I was employee 51. And every day leading up to the job, I remember thinking, yeah, everyone needs to, have a plunge. This might be mine. I was so scared. I was like, what, but there's something about it. There was enough there for me to be genuinely scared, but also genuinely excited. That was a big pivot. So going from like global, where you have lots of options and opportunities, to small, build it, run it, do everything. I learned so much in that pivot. I was able to build functions, build a team, make a ton of mistakes, and learn that it was okay. The sky will not fall when you make a mistake. I credit that to the leaders of that company. So that was one. And then the most recent pivot about 2 years ago, when I left corporate to become a consultant, I remember thinking, there is no safety net here. It's like, this feeling is different. It's a scary feeling, but it's a different level of scary because you don't have the foundation of a corporation, of an organization. And so The difference though, Laurie, is, and I didn't have everything perfectly mapped out, and I still don't. So it was like I was going on this journey of trusting my experience and, going back into consulting as an independent consultant. And I was scared, and I had the same feelings of, what if I didn't have a detailed plan? I had a plan, but it wasn't like a detailed, 3-year plan. The big difference as I've grown is I had confidence in myself, and I leaned a lot on that. And it was like, I did actually had no idea what week 2 would look like, week 3, week 4, let alone months or the year. But I had enough confidence to say, okay, this is something I'm going to use all of my experience, all of my knowledge, all of my friends and mentors to just figure it out. So that was a new feeling. It was like a fear, but also a trust in yourself that you can get through this. It's not a good analogy, but it's like, I was thinking about, I remember, and I don't know if a lot of kids used to do this or if I'm just weird, but I remember like when my cousins would come over, we would play like in the dark game. And so we'd turn the lights off, and we'd have like cushions that you had to step on. And so I was like, it feels like you're in the dark, but you also know like you'll get there. You're not going to fall into the pit. So it's like stepping in the dark and also trusting yourself. That journey, and I'm still on it, it really pushes you back to, what do you want to spend your time on? What's going to be the most important thing? Going back to what's going to make an impact to the people that you're working with, clients, colleagues, stakeholders, the people, what's going to make an impact to you. And you start to realize it's such a cyclical experience when you have all those things come together. So I don't know what that third pivot or fourth or fifth will be, but I'm not afraid of it, and I can't wait for it, actually. So that's exciting whenever I'm ready for it.
Yeah, no, I completely agree with you. Obviously, we were at that same small shop, that same 51 person shop that, we grew. And yes, there is something very freeing about leaving the confines of a big structured place. Like they are great organizations to learn and grow, and take the water rings off, learn, train, but having to go into something, and when you're such a small group, own it, deploy it, it's your ideas, build it. It does allow you to kind of reimagine what is failure, what are mistakes, because it doesn't have to be perfect all the time. And you see very visibly the executives around you, the people around you are also still figuring it out, which is so wonderful. And I would completely agree. Even moving out into my own entrepreneurial stuff, it's been very wonderful to be like, I don't have to have all the answers on all the things. I
Mhm.
actually just need to have the confidence in what I'm doing and the confidence in the experiences and the skills and the training that I've had, that I like every problem is figure outable for lack of a better term. And it's an interesting spot to be when you're like, I think I can figure this out.
Yeah, I think this is a big one that you've hit on, which is, in both of us, had our Deloitte, training and our Deloitte years. And what you learn to be a good consultant is repeatability and, being confident in presenting the answer or the framework to present the answer, right? That's how clients trust you. Hey, I've done this 5 times before, and this is how I would do it here. And you can apply that when you go to, a smaller shop or a new company, or you take a big shift. And so the ability to experience, but also remind myself constantly that you're not responsible for the answer right away, and you don't have to have the answer quickly either. I remember I joined WhatsServe in early December of that year, and then Christmas holiday was right around the break, and the CEO asked me, what's your learnings? You've been here for few weeks. Give me your take. And I said, oh my gosh, I wish I was going faster. I'm going to take this whole break to learn these things that I've written down that I'm not up to speed on. And he just kind of gave me this funny look, like, what do you mean faster? Like, you've been here 2 weeks. And so I very vaguely, even though that was like, gosh, that was over 6 years ago now, I remember that comment and that face from him, because he was like, what do you mean faster? So, fast forward now where I'm like, I don't need to respond fast. I don't always have to be the fastest at connecting the dots and the most, brilliant answer. It's just slowing down. It's using back to, using the resources that you have. Well, I know I can do this, and I know this person can help me here. So let's get in a room and do this together and then see where that goes. It's still being decisive. I will say that's the other component of, you may not always have the answer, but you have to have a clear path and a clear decision-making framework, but you don't need to do it fast. And you personally don't have to have the answer. And so that's been, use your words. Yes, it's been freeing, but I think it's also been a mindset shift on what value I offer. Because if your value is always, I have the answer and I can get to it the fastest, that's going to run out very quickly. None of us will have that. But if your value is, we can probably find a path to get here and I will help you build that path, then that's endless. It's a great observation. And I think it's something that I really have to remind myself a lot, because, even the way of where we are now in terms of the way of working is speed and pace and acceleration through AI and automation and all these things. And those things are great. But you always have to remind yourself that may not be the final answer. You don't have to get to it quickly. You just have to get to that path to get to it.
Absolutely. And I want to go back to something you said. It's kind of that dovetail of having that confidence in yourself. And I think a lot of that ability to figure it out, to reflect and say, I don't have to have the answer all the time. I have to just help engage in how we're getting to it. What's the decision making? It comes from that place of confidence. And I'm curious about how you develop that. I mean, we all have those moments where we have self doubt, and we have the moments early in our career we're like, I don't know what we're doing. But I do want to better understand, what for you was that moment where you're like, yes, I've got this? Or, what were those building blocks that had to be there for you to get to that place?
So many building blocks, so many blocks. This is very much my style of operating in life, but professional life, personal life is, I don't really operate independently. I'm an independent consultant. I have a small firm. That's me. But I don't actually operate independently. Like, I have learned that you must tap into your resources. And that's a broad word, and I can tell you what I mean. Resources in terms of, yes, there's so much courses and, content out there. You can go into, leadership coaching and train. And so there's that kind of more, structured, prescriptive resourcing. Of course, your network is a resource, your mentors. I would not be here if I had not learned to build long-term relationships with people who I've met throughout my career, people such as yourself, people even early in my career. And so that is a huge component of going back to, like, you're not always going to have the answer, and you're not always going to, even though literally I've been doing org design for 20 years, but I will still come across scenarios where it's like, I actually don't know. Like, and so you're never going to have that. And so to me, it's like, my personal confidence is built on my ability to build my resources and know that I have a place to go when, one, be okay with not knowing the answer. So of self-awareness, but two, like, having a toolkit made up of, prescriptive stuff, made up of communities, made up of friends, mentors, made up of family. It's a lot of different things for me, which is great, because not everything's always going to be there either, right? And so I think thinking more creatively now that I'm on my own about what is my L&D plan, right? Because in a company, you've got all those kind of mechanisms that helps you think through it. You have an annual performance review, you have a goal setting cycle, and those things are in place for you. And that confidence can falter because if you're not constantly thinking about, what's holding you up? Where do you go when you need this? Being comfortable saying, something as simple as, I actually don't know how to price this. And I've been pricing projects for so many years. And it's like, gosh, I'm kind of stuck. So it's even something as simple as like that, where it's like, all right, I'll just text a friend, or I'll just refer to my community that I'm part of, or, or so on. So I try to invest in those things because those things give back to me.
And I couldn't agree more, right? I think there's something so wonderful about, yes, you're an individual contributor in your consulting practice, but you have a community of people behind you. And there is really something wonderful to know that you can pick up the phone, someone's going to answer, they'll help you talk it through. And it comes from, in my mind, like, you're surrounding yourself with other confident people, other people who want to see you be successful, who feel good about the work that they're doing, means that they can freely share the information because it's not a competition. There's more than enough work to go around. There's a ton of opportunity. And how do you build that together, when you build something that everybody can take a little part in and everybody can bring their strengths to the table, even if it's a distributed table and not the same table, that gratitude, that pay it forward is really continuous. So it really resonates with me as well. And I've done somewhat similar. I think the idea that you're out there on your own every day, like that's a really tough go.
That and I will also say that it extends to wherever you are, if you're in corporate or contracting or consulting or whatever spectrum of work you're doing. To me, it's and maybe now, especially because maybe I'm, have been doing this for a while, where it's like that blended network is so mutually beneficial, and we need it so much as we go further in our careers. And so having a set of people, no matter where they are, they may have nothing to do with the work that I do or be able to solve my, business problems, but they have their own perspective, and how I lean on them may reciprocate on how they lean on me later. And it all kind of comes together. But I think a lot of it is coming from trust yourself to build those relationships. Don't have that scarcity mindset, and don't be limited either. Because I do operating model work, I'm only going to be looking at operating model kind of connection points. Not at all. It's actually just reminded me, I was working with a proposal, and it just reminded me in the moment that the big part of it had nothing to do with system, but a big part of it was their HIRS system. And somebody in my network, who is mostly a friend of mine as opposed to a work colleague, is a Workday ninja. And it just dawned on me, this person doesn't do this type of work. But I was able to have a 15-minute chat with him on the very technical system implications of Workday that then helps me, figure out how to position some of the challenges to the client. So relationship building, it's like the golden key to everything as you get further into this.
Absolutely. And, and it really does, take us to that piece of obviously you being on the impact list because it was the relationship that we built over, so many years working together. And, now that we've talked holistically about the community that you've built, I am really curious about, who's somebody on your impact list, someone who, helped to shape how you lead in this phase or maybe helped to shape how you lead earlier.
I knew you were going to ask me this question, and it's such a hard question because I have been so fortunate. So I'm going to give you a very consulting answer. And then I'll give you a real answer, a set of names. But I think for me, it's buckets of people because there have been a lot. And I think I really feel myself fortunate because in my career, a lot of my bosses, starting out at Bank of Montreal, at Deloitte, at Watserv, have not only supported me, but they've sponsored me. Okay. So I've had a bucket of people that I think of in my network that are sponsors and supporters. Then I have a bucket of people who have challenged me, made me feel really uncomfortable. And frankly, a lot of those people are my team members that were either on my team or on parallel teams, or, where we're collaborating together. And now we've left those companies or left those moments. We look back and we're like, gosh, we really bonded because we had the debates, we had the discussions, we had the growth, we strive together. So I really value those people. They have challenged me. They have made me think differently. They have made me grow. I will also say, Laurie, there's a bucket of people where I've learned what not to do. And that's equally valuable because you see the impact of when things aren't done the right way. And so I'll put them in my bucket of people who have impacted me. And then there's, of course, my personal community. And my biggest impactful person, of course, is my partner, my husband, Jason. You cannot do any of this without the foundation. And your foundation starts at home. And so I've had that fortunate, supportive environment, safe environment. I could fail at work and I could fail at home, and I felt safe. So I credit, everything to that foundation. But since you asked me for a person, I always think back to my starting career. So I started working right when the recession 2006, 2007 recession started. And I ended up at Bank of Montreal org design team. And I had two bosses, both who have retired actually, but I'm still in touch with, Rob Savin and Madeline Hunter. And they shaped me from the very beginning. And of course, I've had these buckets of people, and there's been a lot of great bosses and great experiences. But if I look back and if I didn't have that initial shaping of here's what good leadership is. Here's what mentorship is. Here's what leading with purpose is. So somehow I got very fortunate in that chaos of that era to land in this team and have two amazing bosses. So I always go back to the foundation. So I'm grateful to them, and yeah, I'm glad we're still in touch. And all of that has kind of contributed to me and how I think and where I am now.
And I think you call it a very powerful arc, right? We always want to think it's, the most recent person, that's the person for us. But oftentimes it's those first examples that we had that really shaped how we engaged with our careers and what it looked like over time. In the last 12 months, got in touch with one of my first bosses to be able to tell her what an impact she had on me too. And I think there's, that foundational element. And then the other part you named, which is you have buckets of people. It's never one specific person. It's a variety of experiences with individuals that really do help to take you on that journey, and they give you the right learning at the right time
Mhm.
so you can take it forward. And I found that as well. And part of why the impact list is in place is, for me, it wasn't one person. It was a variety of people that helped to shape who I am and how I lead, and what I think career looks like in the future. So I know it's a consulting answer, but I really appreciate it.
That's it. And then you asked me in the very beginning, like, where am I? What's my style? And like that's a big part of it. So I hopefully have another 20-year journey ahead of me of working. And those are the core elements of success: building long-term relationships, learning, even from relationships where you're like, maybe we don't do the same work, maybe we're not in the same sphere. So those are the things I value, I want to invest in. They will come back 10 times fold career-wise. So
For sure. And so now, as you kind of look at where you are and where you want to go, what's an imprint that you want to leave as a leader? What are you hoping folks will feel like from working with you as you move forward?
yeah, my mind goes to two answers, and they're slightly different. But one, I have to say, I always want to feel when I work with a client or a team, they can look back and say, we got some impact out of this. We got to an end state. This was helpful. We helped clear the path, and we can build on it. Because the type of work that I do is big transformational change. And so it's not just about, hey, did we implement it and get the answer outcome in year one, but can we build on it? So that's what I try really hard to do in terms of how I design frameworks and how I work with clients. I like to dig in at a level of understanding and being part of that company so that I can hopefully, help build something that's a foundation for more. So that's really important. I'm not always perfect at that, and there isn't always success at the end of the road. So the other part of the answer is what I'm hoping to leave with every project, client interaction, workplace experience is a human connection. So back to like changes are being executed by humans, and we're all humans. And so I think that's become equally important to me, where maybe we didn't get to end of the road on this problem statement, but I got to know you, I got to know about you, and you got to know about me, and maybe we had dinner a few times and we've exchanged thoughts and we've kind of made an impact on each other on a human level. I think both are very equally important to me. If I work with a client, I don't leave with that relationship and that human impact both ways. It doesn't feel like a success. It feels surface level, even though we may have designed the perfect thing ever. If we don't have that human connection, if we don't have that understanding of I got to know you, you got to know me, it doesn't feel successful, if I can use that word. Because I think that's the back to the whole concept of what brings me personally confidence is those things equally as saying, hey, I've finished this project and now I have this thing I can say I've helped do. But equally important is, and I worked with these set of people and they know me and I know them. And that was a great experience.
I couldn't agree more. I think, lack of better term, we live in this like epidemic of loneliness. I think people are really craving that connection and that desire to feel like there's a human on the other side of the table, in a way that I think, 10, 20 years ago, who cared? But now it's that people really want to feel, seen and heard. And I couldn't, I couldn't have summed it up better. It's when you leave that engagement, you left with a relationship intact. People not just understand that you're smart, but they care about you, you care about them, and you want to know what that future holds. What is going to happen in the organization? What's going to happen to them personally? Like that
Yes.
that desire to create that connection, I feel, is so much stronger now than it was in years past. So I love that. And I mean, you and I haven't worked together in a number of years, and we still stay quite connected. So I think you're well on your way with that, creating that
And
imprint.
LinkedIn really helps because you're not always weekly catch up with everyone, right? But you see the updates on LinkedIn. And I love seeing when I see an announcement, oh, we have a new org structure, we have a new leader, and you're like, okay, this started with this project and now they're here. And I love seeing the person. Again, the clients you don't always keep in touch with on a weekly, monthly basis, but you'll see the updates and you're like, okay, like that's our connection point. We had some connection there, and it's great to see their success. So I do love LinkedIn for that. And same for you and I. Like we're close, but we're not always meeting. Unfortunately, we live far away. We don't always. And so, but I think that connection back to personal and work, you can kind of somehow follow it on LinkedIn, which is nice as well.
And it's a great segue too. I mean, you've told us so much about the journey that you've been on today, and for our listeners, if they want to reach out and hear more and get in touch with you, is LinkedIn the best way to do that?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. LinkedIn, I think my email's in there. And, I love connecting with any type of functional kind of professional because, as I mentioned before, like all of it's connected. It may have nothing to do with systems, or they may have nothing to do with the work that I do, but there's a connection we can form and it always reciprocates. So, yeah, I look forward to that.
I love that. Well, thank you again, Numrah, for sharing all your insights with us today, and I look forward to seeing what's going to happen next.
Thank you for having me. It was a great chat. It went by super fast. So I appreciate all the questions and all the dialogue. And it was really, really great to chat with you.
Thanks for listening to The Impact List. If today's conversation gave you something to think about, subscribe for more grounded, honest discussions with leaders who are figuring it out in real time. And if this episode would help someone you know, pass it along. This is your reminder to lead clearly, stay human, and focus on what actually matters.